But Tim, tell us about what you've been working on for the paper tomorrow.
Well, it's the continuing drip of allegations about Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, which has been the main focus of our efforts this week. And what we're revealing is that she has been repeatedly told by government lawyers that she's effectively illegally detained a group of asylum seekers at a detention centre a processing centre in Kent. The Times wrote a little bit about this. Everyone's overcrowded down there. There's a diphtheria outbreak, but what we're told by multiple sources at the top of the government, and that is quite significant, there are a lot of people who seem to have it in for Suella Braverman in all corners of Whitehall. And she appears to have, instead of accepting that this legal advice, we're told, explicitly said, not that if you carry on doing this, you might break the law, but that you are already breaking the law. And at that point, other cabinet ministers tell us, you have to act fast to try and make sure that's not the case. And she appears to have sought a second legal opinion and refused to provide money to put people into hotels or to release them on immigration bail. And the people who've told us about this insist that, that is probably a breach of the ministerial code itself, which was something she had to resign from the previous government for. And the remarkable thing is that, a lot of people think that this is further evidence, not just of an ideological sort of drive that Suella Braverman has, but evidence that she's probably incompetent as well. Because while a bunch of right-wing Tories might say, well, here's someone who's standing up to all these lefty lawyers and wants to keep these people locked away, the upshot of this, we're told, is that there might have to be a public inquiry. The government might face a judicial review, which government lawyers think it would lose, and it's possible that the people incarcerated would be able to launch a class action lawsuit, which would cost taxpayers millions of pounds. And quite far from keeping these people locked up, the upshot would be that every single one of them would be given asylum in this country. So it just seems to be another example of someone who's never run a big department before, who is, as far as her colleagues are concerned, completely out of her depth.
And Tim, how long do you think this story is going to run for? Labour is obviously going in very heavily on the attack lines against Suella Braverman. There is that adage that if a story keeps running and running and running past a certain amount of time, then you're going to have to do something about it. How problematic is Suella Braverman going to be for Rishi Sunak?
Well, I think the fact that so many people have talked to us about this aspect of this story suggests that there's likely to be a drip that continues. A lot, she's got three problems, really. There are some people who dislike her, the sort of political, ideological approach she takes to immigration in general. There are some people who think, that for the sake of propriety, she shouldn't have been returned to the government so quickly. There are civil servants who regard her as unpleasant to work with. We're told that they are calling her Suella Cruella, after the puppy kidnapper from 101 Dalmatians. And there are people who think she's plain not up to it. And if all those people keep finding reasons to pick up the telephone to journalists, it's hard to see how this can be brought, swept away anytime soon.
OK, well, look, thank you for that, Tim. Let's go to our panel for a bit of reaction to that news. We are going to sort of do a bigger reflection on the week's news, but it looks like Suella Braverman is going to continue to make headlines for the wrong reasons. Robert Shrimsley, I'll come to you first.
Well, I think it's a very interesting story. It's also, in a sense, perhaps not overly surprising. I think this is the double bind that Rishi Sunak is in with Suella Braverman. We all understand why he did the deal. Her endorsement came at an absolutely critical moment and tipped the balance quite clearly towards him in the leadership contest at a moment when people felt it was still in the balance. If she'd gone to Boris Johnson, who knows? So, rather like she did with Liz Truss, she leveraged her position to get the Home Secretary's job, and he paid the price of that. But the problem is the twofold one, not only that a lot of people don't like her particular brand of politics, then again, she's just another version of Priti Patel to that extent. The bigger problem is a lot of people don't think she's very good. And so I think the worry for Rishi Sunak probably is less the political arguments that he may or may not have, and he's put a very trusted ally in Robert Jenrick in as the immigration minister to rather please her. The danger, I think, is that she will simply be beset with problems that go to her basic competence. And having made enemies in officialdom and the security services, you're not going to find a shortage of leaks, I think, about all the things she gets wrong. And so he could end up in this double bind where he either keeps a Home Secretary who's manifestly not up to the job, or he gets rid of her and deals with her on the back benches, being problematic and representing a wing of the party that he needs to keep inside the tent rather than out of it.
Thanks for that, Robert. Rachel Sylvester, do you think that Rishi Sunak is going to regret making Suella Braverman Home Secretary? Because it does feel, I mean, look, it's a department. I worked at the Home Office on my very first job. It is a department fraught with danger at every twist and turn, even if you are an incredibly competent person with a very strong team around you. Do you think he will regret putting her in there?
I do. I think it's the combination of incompetence and ideology which is going to be so problematic. And I think the fact that he appointed her really shows how weak he himself feels he is, that he had to bring her into the tent, as Robert puts it. But it really reminds me of Ken Clarke's metaphor that he used to use about the Tory right-wingers being like crocodiles around the boat of Downing Street. And Tory prime ministers always chuck buns to these right-wingers. But Ken Clarke used to say, the problem comes when you run out of buns. So Rishi Sunak chucked them a bun with putting Suella Braverman into the cabinet in this very high-profile, important job. He's chucked them a bun by not going to COP27. The problem is what happens when Rishi Sunak runs out of the buns, as Ken Clarke would put it. And I think there's another problem with the Suella Braverman appointment, which is that there are things on which she doesn't agree with the Prime Minister. That's already clear on the kind of net migration target. They disagree on really fundamental points of policy. So he's put her there for political expediency, and I think he will soon come to regret it.
I mean, Michael Crick, I hear from Conservative MPs, I was speaking to one on Thursday night, who said to me, oh, we love that, the left and everybody's jumping up and down about Suella Braverman. It shows that the left is just rattled on immigration, and actually, her views on immigration are what the Red Wall thinks, and we want to get back on that territory. We're happy to have that fight with Labour. I mean, do you think there's any truth in that? Could she be a strength in any way?
Well, possibly in the Red Wall, but I think ultimately Braverman may end up leaving the government, as Rachel suggests, over this whole issue of immigration, in that if this government is going to achieve growth, it's quite likely that it's going to have to involve some form of liberalisation of the immigration rules, and Suella Braverman isn't going to like that. Quite apart from all these problems that Tim has just been talking about, although it has to be said that Home Secretaries are regularly get into trouble for breaking laws of various kinds over the years, and it sort of somehow it bounces off them and doesn't seem to make a difference. But I mean, I can never understand why really she ever got anywhere in the first place. Anybody who's ever had any dealings with Suella Braverman always wants to talk about her, her lack of any record, any experience. I mean, talk to people in the law. They say, well, her legal career was pretty meager. She didn't do many important or big cases, and yet she ended up as Attorney General, then Home Secretary. It is a career that. I mean, I suppose the key thing was that she was the secretary, or was it the chairman of the European Research Group? And that has given her this prominence and this status and this power within the party. And who knows, if she hadn't done the deal that Robert mentioned earlier with Sunak, who knows, Boris Johnson might have been a candidate, and who knows what would have happened amongst the members.
It's interesting. There's another story which has just broken, which might lean into Suella Braverman's security breach. The Mail on Sunday is reporting that Liz Truss's personal mobile was hacked by agents suspected of working for Vladimir Putin. Security services have told the Mail on Sunday a year's worth of private messages were downloaded. They include top secret conversations with foreign governments about the war in Ukraine and politically sensitive messages that she exchanged with the former Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng. I mean, Tim, I suppose a story like that does put into context why security is so important if you are a top-ranking senior government minister.
That's right. And a lot of ministers, frankly, are pretty lax with their phone details. That explains, from my point of view, why I have 3 different numbers for Liz Truss in my mobile phone at the moment. It kept changing over the summer. It was always quite hard to get hold of the new one, but eventually you did. And by the time you got hold of it, in at least one case, she'd stopped using it. So it does explain what was going on there. Boris Johnson apparently hushed it up and didn't want that to be revealed. Truss was apparently worried that it was going to cost her the leadership election. I think there'll be some people wondering what some of those messages reveal, and if anyone has got them and wants to put them out in the fashion that WikiLeaks did a while back, that could be very embarrassing indeed. But, the difference is it's all in the timing, isn't it? Liz Truss isn't there anymore. Suella Braverman is. So it's not something that's going to bring the government down, but it's clearly highly embarrassing.